The boxing world is getting pretty heated these days. The world of boxing puts the best of the best against each other. Jake Paul recently had a matchup with Tommy Fury, but has to fight Tyron Woodley, and he had something to say about George Kambosos. And what about his thoughts on Quade? Tune in today to find out what happens in today's video. So just sit back and relax as we get started. First, Jake Paul on Kambosos. Contrary to the doubts of many, Jake has managed to get a name in the boxing world for himself by being spoken about by all of the legends and professionals like Dana White, Mike Tyson, Tyson Fury, Conor McGregor, and many others. He's adamant about changing up the way boxing works and has proved to do so in his life. He has created a lot of hype for boxing in the year that he has dedicated to the sport. Jake Paul has been loved and revered by his younger audience base, but has been hated by many others in the pre-existing YouTuber sphere and now in the MMA and boxing industries. He started with not so humble beginnings as a Vine star and had to move on to other alternatives like YouTube after Vine had been shut down. It seems that Jake Paul is spending his days on social media talking about the big boxers that are garnering attention and showing up in the spotlight. He has a few comments and free time to talk about the boxers, as he seems unfazed with his rematch against Tyron Woodley that he won. It seems that he has a lot of time to spend talking about some Australian boxers, if not all of them. He had a few words to share on the newly crowned champion in the boxing world, who goes by the name George Kambosos. It's reckoned by Jake Paul that George Kambosos is going to become a massive name. George is going to shine for years to come, as he will reign as the undisputed champion. He also claims that the Queenslander and upcoming boxer by the name of Liam Paro will walk in the same footsteps of George Kambosos and make his way to the top. So what about Quade Cooper? We also know about the big boxing icon by the name of Quade Cooper. But the problem with Jake Paul isn't that he isn't necessarily ignoring him or anything. It's just that he doesn't really know anything about the esteemed boxer. It has become clear to everyone that Quade Connor had made his offer to Jake Paul a long time ago, but he never really caught sight of it. The professional rugby player made an offer to cave his head in, but Paul never really responded. When interviewed and asked about the scenario where Quade Cooper asked to box him in a match, Paul said that he didn't even know the guy. Paul stated that he gets called out by so many celebrities in a day or week that it becomes really hard to keep track and keep himself on top of all things. He stated that he can only focus on one thing at a time, like the boxing match with Tommy Fury, which unfortunately had to be canceled because Tommy couldn't participate due to his broken rib. Next, Jake Paul accused of match fixing and doping. There are many other claims regarding Jake Paul fixing matches, as things almost always seem to be sloppy or in his favor when it comes to the fights. Tommy Fury has also made allegations regarding him recently that he has been refusing anti-doping tests leading up to their match. Many fighters have declared that their fights are somewhat of hugging matches rather than actual fights. Things also seem to be a bit fishy when Tyron Woodley rocked Jake Paul into the ropes. Some experts claim that Jake Paul might be doping. Some professionals have claimed that Jake has been under the influence of performance-enhancing drugs to make years and months of improvements within weeks, and has refused to get tested on multiple occasions, which could also be considered to be a dead giveaway. It is also likely that Jake Paul might get away with these doping tactics, as many steroid assay tests are done for specific performance-enhancing substances, and new esters of illegal substances are being manufactured and tested every day that primarily go undetected in the aforementioned anti-doping tests. Now, let's look at Tommy Fury and Jake Paul's fight. Tommy Fury and Jake Paul had a bit of a beef a few months earlier, which led to a fight being organized between them. The Gypsy King's younger half-brother accepted his offer, and multiple press conferences were held where a lot of trash talk was thrown around between the two and the Fury family. Their father, John Fury, didn't have anything particularly nice to say about Jake Paul that we could mention in today's video. What we can say is that he mentioned something along the lines of bending his significant other over. Tyson Fury played it cool in regards to the Paul brothers by saying that they are doing good for the boxing world by creating hype and a love for boxing. But when it comes to his half-brother Tommy, he stated that Tommy had to beat Jake Paul, and there was no doubt that he could do it according to him. When asked what he would do if Tommy lost, Tyson said that Tommy would have to publicly change his family name and he would be disowned if he lost to a YouTuber the likes of Jake Paul. Next, the training camp scenario. Things were pretty stressful when it came to training camp for Tommy, and Jake wasn't skimping out on training either. His half-brother and heavyweight champion Tyson Fury made sure that Tommy gave it his all for training camp. A video surfaced where Tyson was going ham on Tommy with a medicine ball in the ribs, which was pretty bad. Tyson claimed that Tommy could have 2 broken ribs, 2 left feet, and his hand tied behind his back and the flu, and he could still beat Jake Paul. Lo and behold, Tommy had a broken rib recently. He had been hit with a bacterial chest infection and fever. When he made it to the gym that day and sparred against Tyson, he couldn't take the slightest blow. The medical reason was presented that day as Tommy had to publicly back out of the fight because of his condition. Let's take a look at Tyson's comments. Tyson claimed that he'd be able to fight, but unfortunately, he could not and had to eat his own words. When interviewed, Tyson claimed that it is what it is, and that is how the game goes. Tommy had medical reasons to back out of the fight, and he did what was right for him. If he went ahead, he couldn't give his best. He knows that he was able to win the fight regardless, but any further complications would have messed up the situation for him in the long term. Now for Jake Paul's comments. As Tommy Fury backed out of the match, Jake Paul had a field day with the situation at hand. He stated that Tommy made a terrible excuse to back out of the fight. He also tried to disgrace the Fury name by claiming that all of them were a bunch of fools, but none of them made any such comments regarding the Paul brothers. Matchup with Tyrone Woodley. As Paul backed out, Jake Paul decided that the show must go on. Tyrone Woodley was already ready for a rematch after the Tommy Fury match, so Tyrone took his place as a substitute. Jake Paul and Tyrone had a deal that if he wins the matchup against Jake Paul, Tyrone would be given an extra $500,000 for his win. Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. Amir Khan and Kell Brook have decided to come to a settlement as their fight has been decided for February 19th. Amir Khan and Kell Brook have had a grudge for years. In an interview, Kell came forward about his thoughts on Amir Khan. Kell said that Amir never really liked him and tried to ignore him as much as he could to make him feel inferior. He hated that the famous boxer did not respect him at all and did not give him a shot at the title. But things are finally going in his favor as the grudge between the two boxers will finally be settled within the boxing ring. You might think that tickets might still be available, but it wasn't like that at all. Tickets sold out as fast as 10 minutes when they became available for the boxing match that will take place at the Manchester AO Arena. People were already hyped for the matchup for years, and as it finally came into being, the tickets sold out. This match hasn't been the fastest selling match of this year, but the fastest selling match in British boxing history. The tension between the two boxers had always been at an all-time high, even during their amateur days. All British fans had such a matchup on their wish list for years now, and they are finally getting what they wanted. The dispute between the welterweights will be finally settled in February, which will ultimately decide who is the best welterweight in the country. And that was all the news that we could fit into today's video. Please take your time to like, subscribe, and turn notifications on unless you want Mike Tyson to bite your ears off at night. Just kidding. And as always, stay tuned for further videos on boxing. See you next time, boxing.